Good morning.
Good morning.
As a born and bred farm boy, from a tiny speck of a farm in the middle of nowhere, Illinois, I sat down to read this week's Parashah. I leaned back in my chair and I closed my eyes, and I saw everything so crisply and clearly. I let my mind leave my cramped Brooklyn apartment, and I relived the ancient text. I imagined myself waking, throwing off something from the game up. And I imagined myself waking up in a tiny, one-room, cool mud brick home. In my mind, I stretched my aching body, and with my arms out wide, I placed my feet squarely upon the hard dirt floor. I breathed in the fragrant air of earth, cedar, and hyssop that inundated the world around me. For months, my ancient self had prepared for what was about to transpire, for the journey I would make. As ever, I had carefully planted seed that I had saved from last year's harvest. In the spring, I saw the first infant hints of green in my field. Once more, I was worthy. Once more, I was granted the ability to cultivate life upon the land. Rolling light away from darkness and darkness away from light, time edged forward. My seedlings were granted life, and they in turn would grant life to my family. My groats, lentils, and amaranth grew towards the sun's warmth, watered by the sweat of my brow and harvested by the strain of my flesh. Their hard, small, green shoots and pods ever slowly engorging, sweetening, evolving their color, ripening, and preparing themselves for what was next. My straw basket filled, I wrapped myself in my finest linen cloth. I took my first fruits, and I began to walk. I prayed that the precious cargo I carried would stay ever fresh and fragrant. It was more than just a gift to the temple. My basket was my proof, my profession to God of all that we had accomplished together. Arriving in Jerusalem, my legs and feet ached after traveling so very far. Nervously, I stood before the priest and the great bronze altar, a cacophony of people behind me, hurrying this way and that through the stone courtyards of the temple. The languid, intoxicating smell of burnt offerings hung thick in the air. I was no longer in my familiar, life-giving field. I was no longer upon my cool, hard dirt floor. I was in another world altogether. And in one powerful moment, I stepped forward and I said, Higarti hayom Adonai Elohecha kivati el haaretz. I declare this day to the Lord your God that I have come to the land. Asher yishba Adonai lavotenu latet lanu, the land that Adonai swore to our fathers to give to us. Arami, oved, avi. My father was a wandering Aramean. And then, just like that, I was back in Brooklyn. And once again, outside my window, I could hear the sounds of upper middle class mothers in yoga pants. And the dulcet tones of their offspring in $500 all-day strollers. But it wasn't these all too familiar noises that roused me to reality. It was the line, Arami, oved, avi. Because this is where I got stuck. I, the farm boy, reading Torah, had been feeling so at home. Because so much of it is agricultural. So much of the text seems to be about who I am. Someone whom God had given land to farm, check. Harvesting the first crops of the season, Check. Giving thanks to the divine for being so integral to every step of our crops? Absolutely. But then I read, Arami, oved, avi, and I was cut loose. Cut loose like reaped grain being tossed around at harvester. My father was a wandering Aramean? Hardly. My dad is a fundamental Christian auto body mechanic who lives back in Illinois with my stepmother. How could this text be so much mine and so much not? Who am I to insert myself into such a narrative? I am a convert to Judaism. My farming past, so many years of my life, coheres with the verses of the Torah, all the more so from this week's reading. But yet, with this one little line, my father was a wandering Aramean, I no longer fit. Looking for answers, I turned to our classical commentators. I opened up my Mikrot, and I found that they too were unsure about this passage. Having no Aramean lineage themselves, the rabbis wrestled with who exactly this Aramean was. Sforno thought it was Jacob. But since when was he an Aramean? Rashbam thought it was Abraham. But wasn't he originally from Ur Kasdim? Our enigmatic Aramean was a riddle to them all. On each and every Passover, as we narrate the Exodus story by way of the Haggadah, we recite these very words, Arami, oved, avi. My father was a wandering Aramean. But again, who among us can truly claim such heritage? Even as we recite them year after year, these words are distant from us. We find ourselves estranged from what we read. The Haggadah makes this text relevant specifically by uprooting and estranging its words, taking this rite from the agricultural temple code and giving it a new context. Arami, oved, avi becomes a way for the exiled, estranged Jews of the post-temple era to wander back into their collective history. The obsolete first fruits liturgy now becomes the beginning of the recitation of the Passover story. The text now extends beyond farming and lives in the realm of the oppressed. Anytime, anywhere. Within the pages of the Haggadah, and by extension the walls of our own homes, the agricultural is combined with the liberational, and the phrase Arami, oved, avi becomes a personal call to anyone who reads it. We are drawn in to become part of a legendary epic. But that's the thing. We are drawn into it. We aren't already there. Even the Deuteronomic farmer did not, in any literal sense, have an Aramean father. He himself was fulfilling a ritual, reciting lines that his father and his father before him had been saying each year for ages, inserting himself into a past that he had never directly witnessed. The ritual of the first fruits commands him to do so. Could it be that all of us, the farmer in our parashah, the early rabbis, you sitting around your Seder table, and me, the convert, growing up with my sheep down a dusty dirt road in Illinois, all stand equally estranged and apart from the pasts that we claim? None of us, and yet all of us, were born to Arameans. None of us can recall wiping the dust from our sandals after receiving the Torah at Sinai, and yet all of us were there. As Jews, what does it mean to own a past that is not your own? To stake a claim to a narrative that in certain respects is simply not yours. For some, this estrangement sows the seeds to challenge their Judaism or leave it altogether. And doing so may be exactly what they need. The rest of us, however, are faced with a challenge. I grew up shepherding a flock and gleaning fields like Ruth, but entirely without satyrs. Most all of you grew up with satyrs and b'nai mitzvah, but are completely removed from the agriculture of the Torah. Yet both you and I feel on some level a connection to the same pasts, narratives, and founding myths of our people. As progressive Jews, we wrestle with such estrangement. It doesn't sit well with us. For good or for ill, we are more skeptical. Our Wissenschaft approach to Judaism can fuel estrangement from our plain collective past. Our Western culture and contemporary way of life fuels a world of 10-second sound bites, immediacy, intensity, demanding careers and conflicting needs. We are all barreling ahead to a better future, inevitably distancing ourselves from where we have already been, be it real or claimed. In our own lives, to close these gaps up and to feel more at home, we often look back and remember. Philosopher John Macquarie wrote that through memory, we bring with us our past. Through anticipation and the projects of the will, we reach out into the future. Certainly, I can remember a time when, as a little boy, I planted my very first tree. My grandmother told me that my tiny tree would one day reach farther than I could ever imagine. And likewise, if I worked hard, so could I. I recall this when I first moved to New York City, so very far from home in every possible way. In his book, Shuva, Yehuda Kurtzer writes, memory played out in ritual and recital as an act of embracing the past, though it can create a deep alienation between the past and present. To be sure, our past is uncomfortable. We move through our texts and deeply held traditions, the very things that can fuel our continuity. At the same time, we are roused to reality, as I was when I first read this parashah. Our attempt to remember a past that is literally not ours both pulls us in and pushes us away. Arami, oved, avi. My father was a wandering Aramean. I'm often asked why I converted. I respond with self-exploration, as well as a measure of things that I discovered in college. To be sure, nothing I say is false, but at the same time, none of it really explains why I changed my life. Was it the agricultural soul of the Torah that drew me in? Was it a theology of constant learning? Yes. And yes. But these are things that I didn't necessarily need Judaism for. What it was, and what it continues to be, is the experience of Judaism, the process of Judaism. Our farmer is enjoined to recite the lines we read today, and in doing claim a past that is not his. At the end of the parashah, when Moses tells the people, quote, "You have seen all that the Lord did before your eyes in the land of Egypt," he's not speaking to the people he brought out of bondage. We all well know that that generation dies out before ever reaching the promised land. No, Moses is talking to a new generation, a reimagined, re-engineered people who are fully ripened and ready for a better future. They are soon to be part of a past that was not theirs. They, like our farmer, our rabbis, like all of us at the Seder table, remember a past that was not theirs, is not ours, but yet is. The Torah wants us to be part of our people's narrative. Judaism entreats us to turn estrangement into relevance, closing a breach with our collective past and transforming it into an opportunity to connect with a narrative far greater than our own. Not just to experience the past, but to grow from it, finding ourselves distant and then creatively working to reinvent, to reconcile, and to return. Whether it is the Exodus from Egypt, learning to live without a temple, surviving utter ruin, Judaism so often looks back and looks within and finds ways to endure, situating us in the past to set off into the future. And just as Judaism has done this for millennia, so too can we as Jewish individuals do the same for ourselves. Harnessing the fluidity of memory, taking the Torah up on its offers, and tapping into our collective narrative is exquisitely transformative. Particularly in this month of Elul, we should engage those moments of personal estrangement and their need for reconciliation. What's more, none of what I have said today is the sole proprietary experience of converts, or farmers, or rabbinical students, cantorial students, and students of Jewish education. Not even rabbis. It is and always will be why I converted, to be both part of this engaged and strange, reconciling, fluidly remembering, exquisite experience that we call Judaism, and to do the same work within myself. But to be sure, it is an opportunity offered to all Jews by our tradition, by our story, by our Torah. As it was for me, it is yours for the taking, and yours for the engaging. Higati hayom l'Adonai Elohecha, kivati el hachayim hazeh. I declare this day to the Lord your God that I have come to this life. I have come with my past, all my loves and labors, and the first fruits they have borne. I have come with my fears, those moments where I feel disconnected, and I have come with my struggles to reconcile myself, both for my own sake and for the sake of my people. Arami, oved, avi. My father was a wandering Aramean, and so was yours.